Good. What do you reckon? All good? Let's do this, guys. Hey, Maxi, how are you, legend? All right, we're going to kickstart this program. Let's go. On the count of five, four, three, two, and one. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. The title of this episode is Why You Are So Bloody Sore. And what do you actually do about it? So if you're joining the podcast live, lovely to have you here with us. You ever done a workout and felt like an absolute weapon? Like you've done your workout, felt like an absolute weapon, and then 2 days later, you're walking like you've been riding like a horse for a week. You can't sit on the toilet. You can't get up or down the stairs. It feels like if you were to sneeze, your soul is going to eject out of your body. That is called DOMS. It stands for delayed onset of muscle soreness, DOMS. I want to explain today why it happens, what it actually means for your body, whether you should train through it or back off it, how to tell the difference between soreness, DOMS, and injury, and then how to recover faster. Because let's face it, we don't really want to hobble around for 3 days, do we? One of the number one things that causes people to fall off during their fitness journey is they suffer pain or injury very early on and they're like, fuck this, I'm out. So let's start with answering the question, what is DOMS? DOMS is a soreness that shows up in your muscles, usually between 12 to 48 hours after a workout. It usually peaks for me at 2 to 3 days. A lot of people think, hey, what's going on here? I'm expecting to be sore immediately, but then they go to bed and then wake up the next day and they're in excruciating pain. It's extremely common. DOMS is extremely common when you've just started training. If you've made changes to your training, maybe you increase the reps or you increase the weight, or you're doing movements that perhaps your body's not used to. These are all things that can cause DOM. But the biggest culprit of the lot are when you are doing what are called eccentric movements. These are movements when you are lowering the weight under load. I want you to think of going into a squat, the down part of the movement, slowly dropping into a deadlift. Here is what I want you to remember. DOMS is a sign that your muscles are adapting, especially when you're just getting started. DOMS is not a sign that you have had a good workout. You do not have to feel sore to have said that you've made progress. I'm going to say that again very, very clearly. You do not need to be sore to make progress. In fact, a lot of people chase the soreness, and what ends up happening is they just overreach in their workouts too much and end up burning out because they're constantly sore and they can't keep training. So what's actually happening in the muscles? When we lift the hood, what's going on? All right, so when you train, especially under load, doing new movements, particularly if you've just started resistance training, you're creating little microscopic tears in your muscle fibers. That's what's actually happening. This is totally normal. The tears are not to be avoided. They're part of what you're actually intending to do. Now, your body responds to creating those tears by inflammation, some swelling, and some chemical signals that kind of activate the nerve endings, which cause soreness. You know, when you have that pump feeling after a gym, part of that is because, kind of like a male erection, there is blood and swelling fluid coming into the actual muscle itself, which is making it look temporarily bigger. Unfortunately, it generally goes away quite quickly. We wish it would stay around. So you want to think of DOMS and the creation of muscle almost like a mini renovation. It's a bit of a mess at first, but it rebuilds stronger. And the cool bit is that your body actually remembers this. There's something called the repeated bout effect. The repeated bout effect. The repeated bout effect is do the same workout that you did today next week, and you're likely to be way less sore. Why is that? Well, because your body's thinking to itself, I've done this before. I'm slowly adapting. Having said that, for a lot of times, for a lot of body parts, it'll just stay for the rest of your life. I've been training since I'm 10 years old. And because I've recently stepped up my intensity a little bit in my programming, I'm really sore at the moment. So it's not just adaptation over the short term. It actually is just going to continue over the course of your life if you keep training like this. So let's talk about the difference between soreness versus injury, because I think it's really important that you know the difference. DOMS is normal. Injuries are not. So how do you tell that difference? Well, DOMS feels a little bit like a dull ache or tenderness, and the tenderness will tend to be in the belly of the muscle, right? The belly of the muscle means the middle part of the muscle. It'll have onset about 12 to 48 hours later, and usually it's on both sides. So for example, if you have squats, you do squats, you're typically going to get DOMS in both quads. You wouldn't generally get DOMS in just one quad, right? And DOMS starts to ease up as you start to move again. Injury is different. Injury works like this. It's a sharp stabbing pain, right? It happens instantly during the workout. You don't have to wait. It happens instantly. And often it's one-sided. For example, if you twinged your hamstring doing a squat or doing a deadlift, it's not going to happen necessarily on both sides. And it often gets worse as time goes by. So this is the difference. There's a big difference between generalized DOMS, which is associated in part with training, and injury. One of the questions that is quite frequently asked by our clients is, well, should you train through DOMS if you have it? What should you do? Should you train or should you rest? My general answer would be, if it's mild DOMS, yep, you can train. You could either work a different muscle group if you're doing a muscle group or a push-pull style programming, or if you're doing what we typically prescribe, which is full body style of programmings, you can just go a little bit lighter on today and it will not make a difference. If it's full-blown DOMS, as in like you feel like you've overreached and you're kind of struggling to walk, my suggestion would be back off, particularly if you're early on in your journey, just back off for a day, go a little lighter, okay? I always say to people that motion is lotion. Motion is lotion. What does that mean? Gentle walking and cycling, mobility work helps pump the blood through your muscles and flush out the gunk and the waste products, right? So you want to be making sure that you're actually moving, you're not sitting still, but it doesn't have to be doing another weight session. In fact, the best thing you could possibly do is go for a walk or go for a ride and keep that blood moving. If you are going to do another training session, let's say you're going to do back-to-back days and you're still feeling a bit sore, a good mindset to take into the session after you've had that DOMS is don't try to hit PBs. Instead, focus on really quality technique, okay? Just quality technique. So why is DOMS worse when you're new or inconsistent with your training? Because this is huge, because most of the crew that are in our program are you guys aged, generally speaking, over 40. DOMS hits hardest when you're new, when you haven't done resistance training, so you're not adapted to it. And the second thing is when you've taken some time off, maybe you used to train when you were 30 years old and you're revisiting, it is going to be most severe. This does not mean that you're weak or broken. It just means that your muscles are not ready and adapted yet. So if you stick with it and you're consistent, what's going to happen? your body is going to get insanely good at adapting, whether you're 40, 50, 60 or beyond, but you've got to give it time. And this is why in those early stages, if you go too hard, too quickly, and you end up just burning out and don't come back to it, you end up doing yourself a disservice because you're trying to train too intensely. Let's talk about sleep and stress and soreness, because this is the part that most people miss. You're on a journey, you're doing the exercise, maybe your eating's improving a little bit, but you have to look at your life outside of the gym as well. If you have a really high stress life, you're going to have high levels of inflammation, which means your hormones and your body is not really working for you. So you're going to expect to have slower recovery. If you have poor sleep, your body simply doesn't have enough time to do the renovation work. So you might be just beating yourself up in the gym. You might be eating well, but if you're sleeping 5 hours a night and working constantly, stressing your tits out, the chances of you repairing are going to be minimal, right? So it's not your legs that are the issue, it's your lifestyle that's the issue. So let's talk about solutions, because I bet there's a few of you that are listening to this podcast either live or on replay that right now are feeling a little sore. Here's the way to think about it if that's you. Let's break it into, say, 3 categories. Physical recovery. What should you do or what can you do? Walk. Number 1, get up and walk. For example, for me, this morning, I knew I wasn't going to be training in the gym today, but I woke up super duper sore. So actually what I did was put my daughter on the back of my bike in her little seat, and then we just went for a pretty casual 25-minute ride around sunrise. It was lovely. I feel much more mobile now than when I started. You could do the same thing with walking or riding or swimming, something that's low intensity and just gets the blood moving. Foam rolling is a really, really good idea. All right, there are some really great tutorials for foam rolling on YouTube that would help you out. Mobility work, really, really good. So this basically means taking your joints through full range of motion to try to loosen them up. Again, you probably feel a little bit like the Tin Man. So what we're trying to do is try to loosen those joints up. And yes, doing things like sauna or hot bath or massage can be really, really good ideas as well, if you have that in your capacity. So we've got physical recovery, we've got lifestyle recovery. So what does lifestyle mean? That means you've got to look at your sleeping and make sure that you're actually getting enough sleep. And when it comes to your training, you got to make sure that you're having some kind of active rest days. If I go and flog myself today and then sit at this desk for 13 hours, 14 hours on end, I'm going to expect to be pretty sore. And so I'm going to try to encourage myself to constantly move. The third part is your nutrition. And so let's break down a couple of key things around this. Number 1, you have to be hitting your protein target. You have to be getting upwards of 100 grams of protein a day at least. Because here's what's going to happen. Remember, your body is undergoing a mini renovation. So it's breaking down muscle, it's breaking down protein. If you don't have the protein to replace the protein that you just broke down from your diet, what's going to end up happening? You're going to remain very, very sore and your muscles stay broken. You want to repair them. Something that we don't talk a lot about inside our academy necessarily, but as you become a little bit more athletic and a little bit more clued into nutrition, we would suggest having carbs after a workout is a really good idea. Why is that? Well, because when you refuel your muscles with a little bit of carb post-workout, could be a combination of protein plus carbs. That can really, really help the recovery process. Let's make that simpler. Probably the one thing that I would avoid is going into the gym, having a hard workout, and then not eating for another 3 or 4 hours. I think that's a pretty bad move because it's primed to go into a recovery mode. if you're not doing anything to fuel that soreness back, you're going to have a problem. Hydration, super duper important. Super duper important. It flushes everything out of you. It flushes everything out of you. So you've got to keep your water intake right up. And finally, for those of you that want to test this out, sometimes having an electrolyte powder can actually help. Partially, the soreness can come down to some electrolyte imbalances. As long as you're choosing a very low-calorie electrolyte powder, this has the joint benefit of making your water taste better, so you drink more, and possibly restoring some of those electrolytes. So I think that's a very, very good idea. And given that it's super cheap, minimal calories, I think it's a good idea. Okay? So let's wind this podcast up. Let's talk about why soreness is not associated, is not equal to progress. We've got to kill this myth once and for all. Just because you're sore, that doesn't mean it's working. And just because you're not sore, that doesn't mean it's not working. How do you know whether it's working or not? How do you know whether you're making progress in the gym? Here is how you know. You are getting stronger. How do you know you're getting stronger? Because whatever lift that you're currently doing, the weight that you usually lift, you can lift more. Or the weight that you usually lift, you can lift more reps of the same weight. These are indicators that you're getting stronger. Maybe your form is improving. Maybe you are in our academy and you're taking some form videos, you're letting us critique the form videos, and we can see that you're getting stronger because you're able to hold yourself in a position, for example, a squat. This is very much about form. The squat is a difficult movement. It's a combination of both the skill, the form, and your strength. And so we can see that you're getting stronger if your form is getting better. This makes sense? If you are feeling more energetic, this is a good sign that you're getting stronger. I want to point to the idea that these are the indicators that you should be paying attention to, not am I sore or not. I'm sure many of us grew up, where it's our age range, right? I'm 43. My dad come into Australia as an immigrant, and I understood, no pain, no gain, son. That's what I was conditioned in. Who was conditioned in that same vein, right? No pain, no gain. It's when it comes to training over the age of 35, 40 and beyond, it's just inaccurate. You want to be consistent, because if you're consistent, you can keep it up over the long term. So what are the takeaways from this episode, team? Here's what I want you to take away. DOMS is normal at the start, and particularly when you are returning to training after a long break or new. DOMS fades with consistency. Your body gets adapted and better at handling it over time. I want you to chase improvements in strength and form and energy, performance measures. Don't chase, am I sore or not? And then finally, if you are wanting to see some changes to your body, you have to look at it a little bit more than just, how is my workout? You've got to look at, how am I sleeping? What's my food intake like? What's my hydration like? It's a little bit more than just one-dimensional, go and beat yourself up at the gym and then just do your best from there. It doesn't really work. And then finally, if something feels off, if something feels like this is persisting, this is the time to go and see maybe GP or physio or whoever you engage to assess whether this is more of an injury than it is something normal and to be expected with either returning to training or starting a training plan. Guys, hopefully this has been helpful and a deep dive into delayed onset of muscle soreness, what it is and what to do about it. We are approaching 400 episodes of the podcast. I think this is 399, so pretty excited about that little milestone. Guys, this has been the Better Body Academy podcast. If you haven't already subscribed, you can search Spotify, Amazon, Google, anywhere, and find episodes of the podcast. I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, my team, what is going on? How are we? Okay, so guys, if you have any questions that you want to ask, g'day, Glenn. How are you, mate? Any questions, I can answer them in the comments. What do we got here? Nicole says, that was me after week 1. Yep, that's what happens, Nick. Again, when you're returning to it, it's going to be a hard graft for a little bit. This is why at the start, you just don't want to overreach too much. Think about why maybe you've quit before. You've quit a lot of times because it was just too much. I was just too sore, right? So play a longer game than this. Just back off a little bit. Be a little bit more measured in your approach. In terms of frequency of workouts, this is the way that I'd kind of put it to people. If you haven't trained in a long time and your goal is to train 3 days a week or 4 days a week, don't go from 0 to 4 days a week. You're going to be really sore. Instead, just do one workout this week and then go for a walk. And once you feel like you're consistent with one workout, then you can add another workout. So in other words, you want to taper in to hitting 4 workouts a week. You don't just want to go from 0 to 4, particularly if you've been detrained for a long period of time. Guys, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask live? I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you guys have any. G'day, Sam. What's going on? Legend. Lovely to have you in here, brother. If you guys are watching on Instagram and wondering who the hell he's talking to, we are live inside of our client groups. So that's what we're doing. Guys, any questions? Cindy says, very useful information, especially for us newbies. Yeah, I'm trying, Cindy. More and more coming, my girl. All right, guys, we're going to love you and leave you. Thanks for that. Hopefully you guys have a beautiful start, morning, or end to the day. Peace out, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.